So, who's actually interested in the Club World Cup? It feels like almost no one is anymore, and that happened very quickly. There was a lot of hype around the tournament for maybe the first round of games, and pretty much since then, no one's been interested and no one's really taking it seriously. In fact, if your club's not even in this competition, you're probably far more interested in the transfer activity of your team and your rival teams more than what's actually going on in this tournament. And that's interesting because on paper the Club World Cup seems like a great idea. I've heard a lot of people saying that some of the issues are results like Bayern Munich beating Auckland 10-0. I don't think that's the case at all. Stuff like that could always happen in a friendly and no one would bat an eye. Plus, you can't have a Club World Cup and exclude clubs from certain areas of the planet just because they'll never be able to compete with the big European or South American teams. Now, before we go into why the Club World Cup isn't working this year, let's do a little bit of history on it, because this year is the first year it's been changed up and is totally different now from what it used to be. It basically used to be an annual tournament which would only have around 7 or 8 teams. The entire tournament would last maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks at most, and would take place mid-season if you support a European team. And there would only be one European team in it, and they would almost always win it. In fact, the European team that is in the Club World Cup has won the last 12.
We're going to win, win, win. You're going to get so tired of winning. You're going to say, Mr. President, please, we don't want to win anymore. It's too much.
The last time a non-European team was champions was Corinthians back in 2012. And with this new tournament having several European teams in it, it feels like it will be a long time again before we see anyone that isn't a European side win it. Because of course you can no longer count on maybe that particular European team making a mess of it and losing a game accidentally and going out and giving us a new winner, because if the favourite European team gets knocked out, there's 11 more waiting to take their place. Now, the competition would typically be held all around the world. However, recently most competitions for the Club World Cup have been held in the Middle East. The European teams would take it seriously. It wasn't a majorly respected tournament, but since you had to win the Champions League to get access to it, and most of the big European clubs had won it before, they gave it enough respect to make it worthwhile winning it. And because it would only last at most a fortnight during the season when teams would be playing anyway, you'd maybe have to move around a few games, but it wasn't that big of a burden. However, nowadays it's totally different. The new format will see the tournament take place once every 4 years, similar to the World Cup and the Euros. And now we have 12 European teams, 6 South American teams, 5 North American teams, 4 Asian teams, 4 African teams and 1 Oceanic team. The competition will now last around about a month. Now look, as I said, on paper the Club World Cup seems like a pretty good idea. You're getting to see teams that would never play against each other from totally different continents battle it out, and I think everyone's been really surprised with just how well the South American teams have done. So on paper this seems like a great idea, but it isn't the success that FIFA had hoped it was. And I think that there's 3 reasons we could look at for why this has happened. So let's start with the first one, the location and the price. Now we'll start with the price. Because FIFA had changed this tournament up to what it was in previous years, they wanted a lot more emphasis on this. Originally when this tournament was being marketed, the price for tickets was extortionate. Some reports say tickets were costing hundreds of dollars. And that moves on to the next part of this problem, the location. When you've got a tournament that's hosting teams from all around the planet, there isn't really anywhere you can host it that isn't a problem for someone. The tournament this year is being held in America. Now if you're a North American team or a South American team, that's not too bad. But if you're from Asia, Europe, Africa or Oceania, it's a bit of a travel. And that means it's a bit of a travel for fans as well. But listen, no matter where you hold it, you're going to have that problem for someone. If they move the tournament to Europe, it would be okay for the European teams and wouldn't be too bad for the Northern African teams, but for pretty much everyone else, that's a huge travel. Now, because of the really expensive ticket prices originally, and the nature of how far you'd have to travel in order to actually get to the tournament to see these games, that's resulted in some of the pictures that we've seen where stadiums are barely filled. But FIFA hasn't helped himself in the slightest, and I want to take a particular example. Let's use the Chelsea versus LAFC game. Now, in America, this game was held at 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. Because the game was held across the planet as well, it's a big ask to ask Chelsea fans to make their way out there for the game and spend all that money on tickets, especially during the off-season. But America's very pernickety when it comes to who actually is interested in the sport of football. See, America's national sport is American football, and past that there's probably far more interest in sports like basketball, hockey and baseball than there is in European football. However, there's certain parts of America where European football is massive. Places like Los Angeles, where LAFC are from, are one of those places. LAFC have a massive and very passionate support, which means it makes no sense that FIFA decided to host this particular game in Atlanta, Georgia. So, even if you're an American living in America who supports LAFC, you have a trip to go see this game, which is over 2,000 miles away. Who in their right mind would go and actually take time off and pay all the money to go and see that game for what is effectively a glorified post-season tournament, especially with how expensive it was? Now, I don't know the total ins and outs of America, but when I mentioned that there was some places in America that cared more about the sport of European football than other places, I don't think Atlanta, Georgia is one of those places. So the location and the prices of tickets was always going to be an issue for FIFA heading into this tournament. But that leads us into our next problem, number 2, the timing of it. Now, because this tournament is a month long, it isn't as easily to slot it in as what it used to be when it was only a few weeks. So for all the European sides, this tournament is being held post-season. I think this is the same as well for the Oceanic teams, the African teams and the Asian teams, but I think the North and South American teams are actually midway through their season, which means this entire tournament is either delaying teams coming back for pre-season, or it's disrupting the main part of their actual season. And at a time where everyone seems to be pointing out and complaining about the fact that players are playing far too many games, it feels really unfair for a lot of the big European teams. Now, I've got very little sympathy for multi-millionaires who just want a holiday. I'm not saying these players need time off to go and spend some of their enormous wealth. The majority of them will be retired by the time they're 35 and never work another day in their life. However, when you are at that intensely high level of elite sport, your body does need time to rest. Last year at this time we had the Euros, and then everyone went into the 24-25 season. It finished and we immediately jumped into the Nations League and now the Club World Cup. When that's done, players will have a brief stint off before coming back for a delayed pre-season, and will then play the entire season again of the 25-26 season. When that's done, it's straight into the World Cup. When that's done, there will be another short delay depending on how far into the tournament you go, granted, where players will get some time off, and then it will be straight into the 26-27 season. And I feel like this really runs the risk of leading to players receiving even more injuries becoming an even bigger problem in players' careers. And finally, we'll move on to our last point. Players and fans don't even know why teams are there. The way that certain teams qualified for this tournament is just bizarre. A lot of teams qualified by winning their respective continental tournaments. So, Real Madrid, Manchester City, Chelsea and PSG are there because they won the Champions League. Al Hilal, Urwa Red Diamonds and Al Ain are all there because they won the AFC Champions League. Al Ahly and Wydad AC are there because they won the CAF Champions League. Monterrey, Seattle Sounders, Pachueta are all there because they won the CONCACAF Champions League. Palmeiras, Flamengo, Fluminense and Botafogo are there because they won the Copa Libertadores. But every other team at the tournament, except for Miami, are there because of some ranking system that I don't think anyone's ever been aware of. And even then, Miami are there under a host slot. The official reason is because they won the 2024 MLS Supporters Shield, which is the league phase of the MLS before it goes into the knockout branch to determine the eventual winner of the MLS, which LA Galaxy won. So basically, Inter Miami got in because they have Messi. And players as well. Whilst I said that teams respect this tournament, a lot of teams would probably prefer to instead be preparing for next season. A lot of the big European teams especially will want pushes to go for their respective leagues and the Champions League, and for that they want their bodies to be rested and raring to go. So when they're being told to play another month of football tacked on to the end of the season to delay pre-season, a lot of them don't really look like they can be bothered. To some teams it probably does feel just like a glorified pre-season tournament. Clubs will probably want to win it because of the massive amount of money that's involved. For some European teams this can really help them out with things like PSR, but even for some of the other, and with respect, smaller teams like the African teams and the Asian teams, the Oceanic teams, they'll be having a great time getting to play against some of these massive clubs. The South American side, I'm sure, will be delighted with how they're getting to go toe-to-toe with some of the European teams, and so far, coming out on top. But that's just my opinion on everything. I'd be really interested to hear what you guys have to think. Please let me know in the comments below. If you've made it this far into the video, please consider hitting that subscribe button, it really helps me out. And I'll see everybody in the next video.